All right, Salakia. This is gonna be a part two to that first video. It had cut off, so I'm gonna finish where I left off at. This is First Peter chapter 5, verse 9. It said, "Whom resist steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions, right, are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world." And that what gives us the hope to keep fighting and to pushing and trusting in the Lord, because we know that ultimately we're not the only ones that's going through this hell and this suffering. You got other brothers and sisters that are a part of the body that are in this truth, that are dedicated, that are true believers and worshipers of Yahweh Shem Yahushua. They're going through the same hell, man. Right? And that's why it's important for all of us to put our trust in the Lord, man. Because like I said before, this is a spiritual battle that we're ultimately in, and I'm going to go to a precept just touching on that. This is Ephesians chapter 6. And I'm going to start at verse 10. It said, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might," not in our own might, not trusting in ourselves, not thinking that, we can figure it out everything, not that we can get ourselves through our problems and our situations that may come towards us. No, we got to put our trust in Yahweh by Shem Yahushua, because at the end of the day, the Lord is the one that's overseeing everything, and he's the one that's in control of all of these things, man. So what more than to put our trust in the Lord, right? And this is verse 11. It said, "Put on the whole armor of the Most High," right? And as I go down into these precepts, you're going to understand what the armor is that it's talking about. Arming and guarding yourself spiritually, ultimately to protect yourself from these, fiery darts that's being thrown at you by Satan, man. Because at the end of the day, that's who's fighting against us. It's not, as it tells you in the next verse that I'm going to get into, we're fighting against spiritual principalities, man, demons on the left-hand side. And they're trying their best to try to knock brothers and sisters out of this truth, man. That's why you got to be constantly grounded and rooted in this truth, man. Because if you're not, then, Satan can sweep you off your feet. And that's ultimately his plans. And it says, "Put on the whole armor of Yahweh by Shem Yahushua, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil," right? And when you go into that word wiles, it goes into the tricks. It goes into the strategies, the tactics, everything, the mind games, everything that it is that Satan does to ultimately to get you to be triggered or to get you to fall out of this truth or to get you to go off, because that's ultimately what he's trying to do. He's trying to break your mind, and he can do that if you allow him. Because as it says in the world, if you cut the head off a snake, then the snake will die. That's the same thing with us brothers and sisters in this truth. If Satan can get to your mind, then he got your whole body. He can basically get you to do whatever it is he wants you to do. He can get you to go off. He can get you to sin. He can get you to do whatever if you're not guarding your mind, man, which is where the spirit is, right? The lob in the Hebrew. So we got to guard our minds, brothers and sisters. And how do we guard our minds, right? I'm going to go down into the armor, but this is verse 12, just basically touching on what we're up against, because we're not fighting against, humans, man. It may look like, we're walking around human beings every day and stuff like that. But these are spirits that we're fighting against, man, that are ultimately, doing their bidding through humans. But ultimately, these are demons, and they're trying to throw us brothers and sisters that are in this truth off, man, especially seeing the time that we're in now that we're coming to the end of this place. The demonic activity is ramping up in this world, man. As it tells you in Matthew 24:12, "And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold." So these demons that are on these people are becoming more, they're ramping up, I should say. They're becoming more prevalent in the world because it's wicked. So this is Ephesians 6:12. It said, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood," right? "But against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world," right? "Against spiritual wickedness in high places," right? And we know that's talking about ultimately Esau, Edom as well, which are the wicked elites that are in high places that are doing witchcraft and all type of different things amongst the people of the Lord. But that goes into spiritually speaking as well. You got a lot of demons on the left-hand side that are ultimately trying to get at brothers and sisters that are, just like what happened during the time of when our Lord Yahushua was talking to Peter, man. He told Peter, "Simon, Simon, Satan has desired to sift you as wheat," roughly paraphrasing. And that's what Satan is trying to do to us. He's trying to sift us. And I'm going to go to that word sift, right? Just for edification sake. But this is what Satan is trying to do to us believers in his truth. That's why we got to remain strong, because we're trying, right? This is the definition of the word sift, right? And it means Salakia. Yeah, that's Satan, man. Salakia, I got to look up the word again. All right. Right. All right. This is the definition of the word sift, right? And it said it is used metaphorically primarily in the context of trials and tests of faith, right? As seen in, in the book of St. Luke, chapter 22, verse 31 through 32, right? It signifies a violent shaking or shaking apart, right? So, like I said earlier, the spiritual demon Satan and these forces on the left-hand side, they're trying to fight against us, man, spiritually. They're trying to break our faith. They're trying to make us give up. They're trying to make us quit. They're trying to make us turn our back against Yahweh Shem Yahushua. And Satan is going to do everything in his power to try to do that. He's going to send things your way. He's going to, allow people to say certain things to you that could possibly trigger you or things of that nature. He's going to do whatever in his power, because we know that ultimately everything in this world is ultimately being used to fight against us, man. Right? So we know that Satan is going to ultimately use whatever he can, whether that's your children, whether that's your wife, whether that's your family, your friends. He's going to use everybody around you that he can use to try to destroy you or try to get you to lose faith, try to get you to give up, to try to get you to quit, to try to get you to turn your back against the Lord. Because that's really all it's trying to do. That's the purpose of it, for him to try to sift you, to try to pull you out of the truth, man. He wants you to turn your back against Yahweh by Shem Yahushua. He wants you to go back into the world, being wicked, doing the things that are of the flesh. That's what he wants us to ultimately fall back into. But that's why you got to be strong in the Lord, that you're able to, fight against all of these darts that are being thrown at you by Satan. Right? So this is Ephesians chapter 6, verse 13, just going into the armor, man. So it says, wherefore take unto you the whole armor of Yahweh Bahashem Yahushua, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand. And we know what the armor of the Lord is, when things are feeling too tense for you, you're going through a lot, you may have to go on a fast. You may have to go on like a day or 2 or 3 fasting, no food, no water, and praying and consistently, reading scriptures, man, to get certain demons off of you, man, or certain demons that are messing with you. Because, all brothers and sisters, battles are different, but we're all going through something, right? And also you can pray. Pray is a nice weapon to use, keeping your medicine strong, as the Apostle Rakah would say. You got to constantly be in prayer, man. You got to constantly be reading the scriptures. That's another way to try to fight against these demonic forces that are ultimately coming up against you. These are all of the things in which it is that we have to do to ultimately to keep the spiritual demon Satan at bay, to keep him off us, to keep him from overcoming us, man. We got to be strong in the Lord, brothers and sisters, now more than ever, seeing that we're at the end of this place and seeing that the evil, like I said before, is increasingly rampanting in this place, America, man. Even just going outside, you're being vexed with all type of different demons, man. That's why it's important for us to have on this armor, right? To protect us from the wickedness that's lurking amongst us, man. Right? So, that's pretty much everything I had to say in today's video. Like I said, just a little quick hit of, being spiritually ready, man. Guarding yourself in the armor of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, because we need it now more than ever, brothers and sisters. Speaking to myself first and foremost, we got to continue to stay in the spirit, man. Because Satan's out here working, man. Overtime especially. So, yeah, that's pretty much everything I got to say with today's video. Lord's willing to be edifying. Till the next time, I'm going to say shalom to the elect.